Back here on HQ Spotlight, there's a fresh WNBA Power Rankings that just dropped right now on CBSSports.com. You're taking a look at 1 through 10. The Liberty sitting at number 1. That is where they were last week. The Storm, one of the biggest risers, rising 4 spots up to number 3. The Fever down 1 spot to number 4 in the absence of Caitlin Clark. The Valkyries, they're up a few spots to number 10. And the Sky in that very last slot on the WNBA Power Rankings, according to CBS. So let's discuss it and break it down with Erica Ayala. Starting at the top with the Liberty, they are number 1. They're the top dogs, 4-0 on the season. They're in action tonight against the Valkyries. How impressed are you overall, Erica, with what you've seen so far from this team, especially with Natasha Cloud in her first season with the club as well?
Natasha Cloud has been the story for the New York Liberty this season, and that is because there are a lot of pieces that are similar to their championship run last season. They do have some players that were more reserve players, limited minutes that are stepping up, like a Kennedy Burke, but Tosh Cloud, her resilience, the dog mentality that she brings to the New York Liberty has really shown on the defensive side, especially with Benijah Hamilton, who was a part of that 2024 championship team, out for the season with an injury. And this is a New York Liberty squad that has also found ways to win in a few different ways, dominating the paint against the Aces, shooting lights out from the perimeter against Chicago, and then a little bit of a mix in that drag out knockdown game against the Indiana Fever, where again Tosh Cloud had to come up big with a defensive stop with seconds left in the game. So the Liberty there stand put right at number 1. Let's talk about the Storm, one of the biggest risers. They're up 4 spots to number 3. What have you seen change from the last couple of games versus, the disappointing season opener that we saw? What has changed with this team for the better in your eyes? It has been their defensive effort. If you look at where the Seattle Storm are when it comes to points per game, they're towards the bottom of the table. However, they've been getting defensive stops. Gabby Williams is such a huge piece defensively, Ezi Magbagor as well, and you're getting by committee. The team is really locked in defensively. They're supporting each other. They're communicating, and that's coming from a team that they had 2 superstars, 2 veterans in Skylar Diggins and Nneka Ogwumike, who were new to the team last year. And as we heard about the New York Liberty last year, this year's Seattle Storm team, they're a little more comfortable and confident speaking to each other, not just for lifting each other up and positive things, but also, hey, when they have to work things out on the court. And I think that's been the difference for this team, specifically on the defensive end, which has been how they were able to rise in our power rankings. Yeah, so we're going from risers to talking about some fallers. And although not a huge fall here, but of course, whenever we're talking about the Fever, there's a lot of eyeballs on that team because of Caitlin Clark, right? Or the absence of Caitlin Clark. They are down 1 spot to number 4 in these power rankings. Clark still dealing with that quad strain, expected to return on June 10th against the Dream. But based off of what you saw, Erica, in that loss to the Mystics, I know we've talked about how they can survive, but are you confident offensively, missing Caitlin Clark as a facilitator of that offense, that they can do so based on what you saw in that game against the Mystics? Well, to answer the question, based on what I saw, there is definitely room for improvement. But that is only because the Indiana Fever, I don't think were really drawing to their strengths in that loss. Washington is a gritty team. They've got 2 rookies who are playing very comfortably in Sonia Citron and, of course, Kiki Iriafen. And every game in the WNBA, if you are not on your A game, that is your opponent, is going to expose that. And that's what we saw a little bit there. So it goes back to communication, what I was talking about with some of the other teams. And it also shows that Caitlin Clark, not only is she a great facilitator, but she can also create her own shot. And when I was in Indiana, spoke to Stephanie White specifically about DeWanna Bonner, who's had a little bit of a slow start here, but I think it's apropos to talk about this Indiana team when you have someone like Caitlin Clark, who of course is going to be at the top of the scout. There's so much energy even off of the court that she brings to her team, to the WNBA. You have to make sure that everyone else doesn't get lost in that and they know their role. So that was a little bit of what I saw in that loss. loss for Washington. And then that's relatively an easy fix. It's just getting back to what individually the players do well, and in the absence of Caitlin Clark, putting their best foot forward as a team to be able to do that, attack a little bit more, take care of the ball, things like that.
And again, if the timetable stays true, we can expect Caitlin Clark to be back on June 10th. All right, let's talk about the Aces. Another faller, they fall to number 7. They get absolutely smoked by the Storm on Sunday. So is it time to start worrying about Vegas in your eyes, Erica?
I was hoping that Vegas was going to have a bounce back. A'ja Wilson talked about the disappointment in last year's regular season. They did make the playoffs, did not advance. They, couldn't get beyond the New York Liberty last year. But what we heard last year was that A'ja Wilson was taking on a lot. And I think that's still the case. I was hoping as Chelsea Gray is getting back to healthy, there'd be some other players that can take up the mantle, so to speak. But I'm actually here in Vegas right now, and Chelsea Gray still getting more acclimated. The point guard, as she's known, is definitely not quite at her peak pace yet, coming off of an injury last season. But we saw her in Unrivaled in the offseason. She's played well here. And they're also integrating Jewel Lloyd. So I do think there are concerns here. The front court has been a little bit of a concern for me, but you have Liz Kitley that played pretty well in her debut in that Seattle Storm game, was able to make a nice run there. So yes, I do think there are areas for concern, and I still put faith in what A'ja Wilson, got the name right this time, and of course head coach Becky Hammon will be able to do with this squad.
Yeah, we know experience in the postseason, that certainly matters. We mentioned the Liberty are in action tonight against the Valkyries. The Valkyries are at number 10 here in their inaugural season, and the last time we saw them in their last outing, they lost 95-67 to the said Liberty. So it's obviously a very lopsided matchup here. I think the Liberty were favored by 17.5 in the last game. What adjustments do you want to see from the Valkyries that, even if they don't get a win, it's still going to be considered moving in the right direction for their team?
This is a team right now that they're very new, quite literally the newest team in the league. And so what I see the team doing, which I like, is that they're focusing on their defensive efforts. When you're talking about offense, you have to be in rhythm, in flow. You have to be able to anticipate where your teammates are. And that's going to be difficult for the Valkyries. As far as things on the offensive side that I'd like to see them improve upon, I do think that there are some players on that squad, Kayla Thornton stands out as one of them, that can call their shot. And I think they'll have to do that a little bit more. You don't always say this, but sometimes you do need a player to just step up and take command of the game and kind of guide and lead the rest of her team. That's what I'd like to see from the Valkyries. They're playing a great team game, especially defensively, and those are going to be foundational pieces that will help them moving forward. But I mean, every once in a while, someone's got to get their shine on. And I think that's what I'd like to see from Golden State.
So the Valkyries were in that number 13 final spot in the power rankings last week. This week, that belongs to the Chicago Sky. So I know there's an adjustment period, right? Because they have some new faces and Haley Van Lith and a new head coach here, but there's a lot of talent on this roster. So were you expecting this much of an adjustment period for this team, Erica?
Probably not this much, but you mentioned the big things here, the coaching staff in particular. And I am one of the people that thought it was a bit controversial to let go of Teresa Weatherspoon after just one season, a team that still struggled last year, and they improved year to year when Weatherspoon was the bench boss there. And now you re-up that all over again, and you bring in some other pieces. It is still early in the season. Systems are going to settle in. And you just have to wonder how much change is the right amount of change if Chicago was expecting to be competitive this season. Now, if this is a team and a franchise that's really looking beyond just 1 year, then you give them a little bit of grace. And so we have to figure out exactly where the organization feels in that respect. But also, you want to make sure that the offense is running through your Angel Reeses, your Camila Cardozos. And I think that's another place where the Sky can improve.
Erica, we certainly appreciate it going through the WNBA rankings with us here on Spotlight. And just a reminder, you can find those right now over on CBSSports.com. Getting a look at the odds to win it all. The Liberty, they're number 1 in our power rankings, and they're also having the best odds here at plus 165, followed by the Lynx and the Fever. We have more HQ Spotlight coming your way on the other side.